I never thought life would come to this. Standing alone on the edge of the city where the lights fade into darkness, I can't help but feel a strange sense of freedom. The air is cold, sharp against my skin, but it feels good. Real? I pull my coat tighter around me, the worn fabric barely doing its job, and take a deep breath. Growing up, I always believed that family meant love, sacrifice, and unwavering support. My mother used to say, family is your first and last home. I held on to those words through every difficult moment, every bitter fight, and every tear shed. It was supposed to mean something. I believed it did. But belief doesn't always align with reality. You see, I was the responsible one, the fixer, the one who knew how to stretch a dollar, how to make a meal out of almost nothing, how to mend what was broken. My sister Lily was different. She danced through life without a care, leaving me to sweep up the pieces. When we were kids, it was small things, a shattered vase, a failed test, a broken heart. But as we grew older, the messes got bigger, more complicated, and somehow always ended up in my lap. Our parents never really saw the imbalance. Maybe they just didn't want to. Lily was their sunshine, their bright, careless girl who always knew how to charm them out of any consequence. When she got married at 19, they celebrated as if it were a fairy tale. I remember helping her with the dress, fixing her veil, and forcing a smile as I watched her rush headfirst into something I knew she wasn't ready for. I didn't want to be right, but I was. The marriage crumbled within a year, and Lily came back home, heartbroken and aimless. I was the one who held her while she cried, while our parents made excuses about how young love never lasts. I took on extra shifts at the diner to help cover the heating bill since she moved back in. Winters in Minnesota are brutal, and the house always seemed colder after Lily's return, as if it too was tired of her endless drama. Time passed, but nothing really changed. Lily got a job at a boutique, but never seemed to have enough money for rent or groceries. My paychecks dwindled between covering her expenses and keeping up with the house repairs that Dad could no longer manage on his own. I didn't complain. I just did what needed to be done, because that's what family does. But one day, everything changed. I came home after a long shift to find Lily lounging on the couch, flipping through some fashion magazine. A few bags of new clothes lay open on the floor. "Where did you get the money for that?" I asked, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. She shrugged. "I needed something to feel better. Retail therapy. You know how it is." I didn't know. I had never known. My retail therapy was buying a new pair of wool socks when mine wore thin. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her out of her oblivious bubble. But I didn't. Instead, I swallowed it down, as I always did. That night, as I lay in bed, listening to the old radiator clank and rattle, I wondered when I had lost myself in this endless cycle of giving. I thought about all the times I'd chosen to stay silent, to help without question, to sacrifice without acknowledgement. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the way my needs had become invisible. The final blow came a few weeks later when Dad called me while I was on my lunch break. I could hear the unease in his voice before he even spoke. "Claire," he started slowly, "Lily's been feeling pretty down lately. We were thinking it might be best if you don't come for Thanksgiving this year, just to keep things calm." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious?" He hesitated, and I could picture him running a hand through his thinning hair, avoiding my eyes if we had been face to face. "She just thinks It might be too much with everyone here. Maybe we can do something later. Just you and us. My throat tightened. For the first time, I felt like a stranger in my own family. I had given them everything, my time, my money, my heart, and still, I was the one who had to stay away to keep the peace. I ended the call without another word. Tears burned my eyes, but I wouldn't let them fall. Not this time. I was done being the quiet one, the reliable one who always gave without question. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't pay the heating bill. I wouldn't take on the burden of keeping everyone else warm while I froze in silence. Let them feel the chill for once. Let them understand what it was like to be left out in the cold. As I sat at the edge of the city, watching my breath form small clouds in the icy air, I felt a strange mix of fear and relief. Maybe they would finally understand. Maybe they wouldn't. But it didn't matter anymore. For the first time in my life, I was choosing me. When I woke up the next morning, I half expected everything to be the same. Maybe I had just imagined it all. The decision, the resolve. Maybe I had just dreamed of finally putting myself first. But as I lay in bed, staring at the faded ceiling, I knew it wasn't a dream. I wasn't paying the heating bill anymore. I had set the boundary. Now I just had to live with it. The first sign that things had changed came in the form of a phone call. It was Mom. I let it ring, biting my lip to keep from picking up. When the voicemail pinged, I played it back. Her voice was shaky, unsure. Claire, honey, I think something's wrong with the heating. Your dad's trying to figure it out, but it's freezing in here. Can you call me back? I didn't. I couldn't. If I did, I knew I'd break, and all my determination would crumble. I kept reminding myself that this wasn't about punishment. It was about making them see how much I had done for them all these years, how they had taken me for granted. A few days passed, and the colds became more frequent. Mom, sounding more anxious each time. Dad, quieter, his messages short and terse. Lily, though, didn't call. I wasn't surprised. It wasn't her style to admit that she needed me. Then one evening, there was a knock on my door. I hesitated before opening it. My stomach twisted with guilt and fear. It was Dad, bundled in his old winter coat, his face flushed from the cold. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me with a mixture of frustration and something softer, maybe regret. Claire, he started, clearing his throat. I don't know what's going on with the heat. It just stopped working. I tried fixing the furnace, but I guess it's beyond me. Do you think you could help out just this once? There it was, the old pattern trying to pull me back in. Just this once. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I cancelled the payments, Dad. His eyebrows shot up. What do you mean? I stopped paying for the heating. I can't do it anymore. I can't keep holding everything together while you and Mom pretend like Lily's the one who needs all the help. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the person standing before him. Why didn't you say something? I tried, I whispered, the words heavy with years of swallowed frustration. But no one wanted to hear it. You just kept asking for more. He didn't argue, just stood there, shivering slightly, and finally gave a slow nod. We'll figure something out. I guess we never really thought about how much you were doing. When he left, I didn't feel triumphant, just exhausted. I knew it wasn't over. Mom would call. Lily would find a way to make me feel guilty. But I also knew that I couldn't go back to the way things were. I couldn't let myself be used anymore, even if it meant being the bad guy in their eyes. Later that night, as the wind howled outside my window, I thought about what it meant to be selfish. I had always been taught that selfishness was a sin, a sign of weakness or cruelty. But maybe, sometimes, being selfish was necessary. Maybe it was the only way to survive without losing yourself entirely. The next morning, I went to the diner for my shift, and everything seemed normal. No one knew about the storm brewing in my family. I poured coffee, took orders, and tried to shake off the heaviness. Around noon, I saw Lily come in. She sat at the counter, her usual bright lipstick slightly smudged, eyes tired. "Hey," she said, forcing a smile. I nodded, unsure of what to say. She fiddled with the napkin dispenser, avoiding my gaze. "I didn't know," she muttered. "I didn't know it was you paying for the heat." "It doesn't matter," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "It does. I always thought you liked being the responsible one. Like it was easy for you." I almost laughed. Easy. Nothing about it had ever been easy. "It's not," I said. "But someone had to do it. You never wanted to." Her face fell, and for a moment, I thought she might get angry or walk out. But instead, she just looked defeated. "I guess I always thought you didn't mind. You never said anything." "Because no one listened. Because you were always more important." Lily didn't respond. She just stared at the counter, her shoulders slumped. After a while, she mumbled, "I'll figure something out." I promise I wanted to believe her, but I knew better. Change wouldn't come easy, it never did. But maybe, just maybe, my refusal to play my old role would force her to grow up a little. Maybe it would make all of them see me differently, not just as the dependable sister, but as a person with limits and needs. As Lily left the diner, I felt a glimmer of hope. Small and fragile, but there. Maybe in the end, I wasn't just changing my own life. Maybe I was giving them a chance to change too. I didn't hear from Lily for a while after that. A week passed, then two. Mom called a few times, leaving messages that sounded more resigned than angry. I think she was finally starting to understand that I wasn't just going to cave in this time. I still went to work, went through the motions, but there was a heaviness inside me that I couldn't quite shake. It felt like mourning, like I'd lost something I couldn't get back. One evening after my shift, I found myself wandering down to the river. It was partially frozen, patches of ice glinting in the dim streetlight. I remembered coming here as a kid, skipping stones with Lily, pretending the smooth, flat rocks were little boats navigating icy waters. We were inseparable back then. Back when things were simpler, before life got complicated and I became the one holding us all together. I thought about calling her, but what would I say? That I missed her, but I didn't miss the way she made me feel small? That I was angry and sad and tired of being the one who had to hold everything together? I wasn't sure I had the words. I didn't expect to hear footsteps behind me. But when I turned, there she was. Lily, hands shoved deep into her coat pockets, looking hesitant. For a moment, we just stood there, the sound of the river filling the silence. "Hey," she said quietly. "Hey." She kicked at a piece of ice with her boot. "I didn't know you still came down here." "Sometimes it's quiet." She nodded, looking at the river instead of me. "I got a new job at the grocery store. It's boring, but it pays better." "That's good," I said, surprised. "Better than the boutique?" "Yeah, hours are longer, but I need it." We stood in silence again, and I could feel the cold creeping in through the gaps in my scarf. Finally, she spoke again. "I guess I've been selfish," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I never thought about how much you were doing. I always thought you'd be there, like a safety net. I wanted to say something sharp, something that would make her feel even a fraction of the frustration I had carried for years. But looking at her now, I just felt tired and sad. I let out a slow breath. It's not just about the money, I said. It's about being seen. You've always been the one people worry about, but I'm tired of being the one who fixes everything without anyone noticing. She bit her lip, and for a moment I thought she was going to cry. Instead, she just nodded. I get that. Or, I'm trying to. I just. I thought you liked it. Being in control, being the one who had it all figured out. Maybe I did, I admitted. But it's exhausting, and it's not fair that you get to be reckless and still have me pick up the pieces. I'm trying to change, she said, her voice almost a plea. I really am. I know. She looked at me then, her eyes soft, and for the first time in a long while, I saw the little sister I used to share secrets with, not the woman who seemed to take and take without thinking. Maybe she really was trying. Maybe finally she understood. After she left, I stayed by the river a while longer, letting the quiet settle around me. I wasn't sure what would happen next. I didn't know if things would really change or if this was just another false start. But for once, I didn't feel alone in the struggle. I knew it was a small step, but it was something. It's strange how one moment can shift everything. After that conversation by the river, I thought things might start to get better. Maybe Lily's new job would make her more responsible, and maybe mom and dad would start seeing me differently. But change doesn't happen overnight. It's slow, messy, and often painful. A week later, I got a call from mom. She sounded anxious, her voice trembling as she spoke. I felt my stomach tighten. I'd gotten so used to expecting the worst when she called. Claire, she said, barely above a whisper. Your dad's in the hospital. My mind went blank for a moment. What? Why? He collapsed. They think it might be his heart. I'm scared. I didn't even think. I just grabbed my coat and rushed out the door. As I drove, my hands shook, memories flooding back. Dad teaching me how to ride a bike, his laugh when I tripped over my own feet at the dance recital. I didn't know how to process the idea of him being so vulnerable. He'd always seemed unbreakable. At the hospital, I found Mom pacing in the waiting room. She looked small and fragile, her eyes red and swollen. Lily was sitting on a plastic chair, her head bowed, biting her nails. I approached slowly, unsure of how to bridge the distance that had grown between us. When Mom saw me, she rushed over, wrapping her arms around me. I'm so glad you're here, she whispered. He's stable now, but they're keeping him for observation. They said it was stress, mostly, and his blood pressure. They're running tests. We sat in silence for a while, the hum of the hospital machines filling the void. Eventually, Lily spoke up. I didn't know he was so stressed, she murmured. He always just took care of things. I wanted to snap at her, tell her that's what I'd been doing too, taking care of things without anyone noticing. But I bit my tongue. It wasn't the time. When they finally let us see him, Dad looked older, worn out. His usual gruffness was softened by the thin hospital gown and the tube snaking round him. He smiled when he saw us, but it didn't reach his eyes. Hey, kiddo, he said, his voice raspier than usual. I sat next to him, trying to hold back tears. Hey, Dad. He reached for my hand, his grip weaker than I remembered. Doc says I need to take it easy. Maybe, maybe I've been pushing myself too hard. I squeezed his hand gently. We've all been pushing too hard. He gave a weak chuckle. Yeah, I guess I didn't see it. Thought I could keep it all going, keep everyone happy. Lily stepped closer, hesitating. I didn't know. I didn't realize how much pressure you were under. Dad gave her a tired smile. It's not just me. Your sister's been carrying a lot too, more than I should have let her. Lily's eyes widened, and she looked at me with something that almost resembled guilt. For once, I didn't feel the need to make her feel worse. It was enough to hear Dad acknowledge it. We stayed with him until visiting hours ended. As we walked out, Mom pulled me aside. I should have seen it sooner, she whispered. I just thought, you were okay? You always seemed okay. I wasn't, I replied softly. I just didn't know how to say it. She hugged me again, and this time it felt different, less desperate, more real, like she was seeing me for the first time. When we got home, Lily sat on the edge of the couch looking at her hands. Claire, she started, struggling with the words. I really am trying to do better. I didn't mean to put everything on you. I didn't see it. I know, I said. But it can't just be me holding everything together. We have to figure out a way to do it together. She nodded, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe we were on the same page. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was something, a step in the right direction. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Dad's words in my mind. How he'd finally admitted that I'd been carrying too much. It didn't erase the years of being overlooked, but it mattered. Maybe it meant that things could be different moving forward. The next day, I made breakfast for the first time in a while, and Lily joined me in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with surprising determination. It wasn't much, but it felt like a start. We didn't talk much, but the silence wasn't as heavy as before. Later, as I walked to work, I felt lighter somehow. The guilt wasn't gone, and I knew there would still be difficult conversations ahead. But for the first time, I felt like I wasn't carrying it all alone. Maybe it was okay to lean on others sometimes. Maybe it was okay to let them figure things out too. When my shift ended, I found Lily waiting outside. She handed me a takeout coffee and smiled awkwardly. I thought we could walk home together, she said. I nodded, surprised but grateful. As we made our way down the familiar streets, talking about nothing in particular, I felt something unfurl in my chest. A cautious hope that just maybe we could find a new way to be sisters. One that didn't leave me feeling drained and invisible. Maybe this was what change looked like. Not a grand sweeping gesture, but small moments of effort and understanding. And for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to let it happen. A few months passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. Dad recovered slowly, following doctor's orders, cutting back on work, and learning to manage stress. He still had that stubborn streak, but there was a softness in his voice when he spoke to me now. A kind of respect I hadn't felt before. Mom took over more of the household responsibilities, and even though it wasn't perfect, it felt like progress. Lily kept her job at the grocery store. She wasn't thrilled about it, but she didn't quit. And that was something. We still had our moments. Old habits don't just disappear, but I noticed she tried harder not to take me for granted. Sometimes we'd make dinner together, and it didn't feel forced. She even started paying part of the rent without me having to ask. One evening, Lily knocked on my bedroom door, holding a small, neatly wrapped package. She hesitated before handing it to me. I I wanted to give you this, she mumbled, looking at the floor. Curious, I unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a simple leather-bound journal. On the first page, in her loopy handwriting, she'd written, "For Claire, because you deserve to write your own story." I stared at it, stunned. She shuffled awkwardly, waiting for my reaction. "Thank you," I whispered. It didn't seem enough, but my throat felt tight. I flipped through the empty pages, imagining filling them with thoughts and dreams that I had pushed aside for too long. She gave a small smile, unsure of herself. "I know it's not much, but I wanted you to know I see you. I know I've been selfish, and I'm trying not to be." I pulled her into a hug, and this time it wasn't strained or reluctant. It felt right. I started writing that night, just a few lines, but it felt good, like I was reclaiming a part of myself that had been buried under years of obligation and guilt. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to write yet, maybe just pieces of memories, or the way the river looked on cold winter nights. I figured it didn't really matter. The important part was allowing myself to have something just for me. The seasons changed, and with them, so did we. I found myself smiling more, taking walks without feeling the weight of everyone else's expectations pressing down on me. I started seeing friends again, meeting for coffee without feeling guilty. I even picked up an old hobby, painting, not because I was good at it, but because it made me happy. One Saturday, Lily and I decided to visit Dad at his workshop. He wasn't working as much, but he liked to tinker, fixing small appliances or carving little wooden figurines. He greeted us with a warm grin, and we spent the afternoon chatting, sipping iced tea, and laughing over his attempts at whittling a duck that looked more like a lumpy potato. When we left, Lily squeezed my hand. "I'm glad we came," she said. I just nodded, feeling the warmth of her hand in mine. It wasn't perfect. There were still disagreements and tough days, but it wasn't the same suffocating cycle it used to be. We were learning, all of us, learning to talk instead of assuming, to listen instead of reacting. It was slow, but it was real. One evening, as I was writing in the journal, I found myself smiling. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living, taking time to be with myself, to dream about what I wanted for the future. It wasn't just about holding everyone else up. It was about finding a balance where I could stand tall too. As I finished a page, I looked out the window. The river glinted in the fading light, still partially frozen but beginning to thaw. A metaphor, maybe. Things that were once stuck, now moving again. I like that idea, that maybe, just maybe, we were all figuring out how to unfreeze from the patterns we'd been trapped in for so long. I closed the journal, tucked it under my pillow, and stretched. Outside, Lily was playing music too loud, singing along terribly, and I found myself laughing. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I belonged in my own life,